So I've had it with this Glock Gen3 G19. There's so many wonderful striker fire pistol options out there that I'm dumping this piece of junk. I mean, there's no forward serrations to let me press check like a tactical ninja. Who wants to actually have to feel the loaded chamber indicator that lets you tell if there's a round in the chamber even in the dark? These plastic sights, I can't possibly carry this thing knowing that I've only carried this gun for about 20 years. They clearly haven't been tested enough. They could just fall off any day now. Speaking of reliability, the plastic single spring guide rod has to go. I can't trust my life to this piece of plastic. I've only got about 8,000 rounds through this thing. I'm sure it's going to break soon. Not to mention this barrel's horrible. The rifling, it's a wonder I can hit anything at all. Let's not even talk about the bad ergonomics. This gun has finger grooves that match my hand perfectly. No magwell for my speed reloads while shooting paper targets. And where's my ambi slide release? I might want to identify as left-handed. This barrel and slide coating, they're also terrible. This gun might fall apart due to rust within the next 50 years. But the final straw and the reason I'm getting rid of this is the trigger. It's horrible. No way I'm going to be able to pull this thing fast enough to hit an attacker at 7 yards. So today, I'm giving up on this pistol and I'm getting a new modern firearm. The Gen5 G19 from Glock. So now that all the sarcasm's out of the way, and before we go ahead and get into the rest of the comparison between the Gen3 19 and the Gen5 MOS G19, I'd like it if you'd go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Also, I want to say that both of these firearms, like everything else on my channel, are purchased by me, carried and or used in one capacity or another by me, and that I'm not sponsored. I don't get any of this stuff for free. Also, I'm not an irrational Glock fan that thinks nothing Glock does is ever wrong. And I also don't subscribe to the internet philosophy that everything Glock does sucks. So somewhere in the middle of the road, some things they do I like, some things they do I don't like, and I make my purchases accordingly, which is why I don't have a Gen 4 and why I also don't have an earlier version of the Gen 5 either. I waited until this one came out because I felt like it was a big enough difference and I liked some of the changes that it actually made sense. So anyway, now on with the rest of the comparison. Okay, so now that we've got all the sarcasm out of the way, let's actually look at what you get with the Gen 5 Glock MOS. So the MOS comes with 3 magazines. This gun's unloaded. With 3 magazines and 2 back straps. Although both these back straps, where it used to come with 4, it only comes with 2 now. And both these back straps have the beaver tail on them. They don't have any of the non-beaver tail back straps. And it comes with the set of 4 different optics plates so that you can mount pretty much any optic out there now. So it does come with the optics plates. We'll start looking at the differences between the Gen 3 and the Gen 5 MOS, and we'll go ahead and start at the bottom of the frame on the grip. So this grip, the new magazine, this grip doesn't have the cutout here like the old Gen 5 had, where when you put your finger across there, it kind of sunk into that hole. Now they said that cutout was to help you strip a magazine out if you needed to. So what they've done instead is put your finger right here, and there's a larger lip on this magazine than there is on the Gen 3 magazine. So I don't know if you can see it here, but this is the Gen 3 magazine and this is the Gen 5 magazine. You can see there's a much larger lip right here to get a better grasp on it. So they've basically done the same thing, without having to put that cut in there that was pretty uncomfortable. Sticking with the magazines, this is a double-sided mag release mag in the Gen 5 now, whereas the Gen 3 magazine release was only one-sided mag release. The old Gen 3 magazines fit just fine as long as you have your mag release set to the right-handed setup. If you switch it over to left hand, it won't work because the cutout's not the same. It has an orange follower, which I think it's kind of neat because you can see the orange follower go down this tray here. It makes it even easier to tell how many rounds you have loaded, not that you can't already see through the magazine. So that's the differences in the magazine. And then with the actual bottom of the grip, there's now a flared mag well. So you can tell right here how there's a lip right here. This is a flared mag well, helps in reloading. It's not the best version of a flared mag well that I've ever seen, but if you were already loading a previous version Glock and weren't having any problems, this is gonna it's not gonna hurt, it's gonna do nothing but help. So they have that now. And this is the old mag well. See, there's no flare on the mag well there. This grip, the texture is different than the texture on the Gen 3. The stippling here, the texture is a lot different. You can hear it there where this is kind of like a sandpaper. I like this a little better than the texture on the Gen 3, although I didn't really have a hard time holding the Gen 3, but this texture is a little better, in my opinion. It does have the back straps where the Gen 3 doesn't have the back straps, the interchangeable back straps. And if you wanted those other back straps, the ones that didn't have the beaver tail, they do sell them on the Glock site, so they're only a couple dollars. They're not expensive, but it does have the interchangeable back straps. And then moving on up, and we'll skip the trigger for now, but moving on up, they changed the coating on the slide and on the barrel. So they're using something that they now call an NDLC, and it is darker. Actually, it's not a whole lot darker than this Gen 3, but that's this Gen 3 slide. I've got recently put some oil on it. But it is darker than the Gen 4 slide, and they say that it is, more abrasion resistant, lasts longer, should be smoother cycling, etc., etc. I don't know that to be true or not be true, but that's what they did. Only time will tell, really, right? Again, on the slide, still the same plastic sights. Actually, let's talk about sights. Still the same plastic sights, but now there's more air between the back sight, which is a good thing because if you're trying to frame up your target quickly in the sights, it's a lot easier to frame them up in these back sights. I know most everybody's going to replace these anyway. I replaced them on my Gen 3. I have some Trigicon sights on there, but it actually helps frame up your target faster, and that I have found that to be true. There's more air in here. When you're using your target to quickly frame up, when you're using your back sights to quickly frame up your target, this works a lot better. So the sights, that's the sight change that they made. They beveled the front of the firearm, the slide, and they beveled the actual frame here as well. Supposed to help with better insertion back into reholstering. I didn't find that the Gen 3 is actually difficult to reholster, even though it's a complete block at the front, and there's not a whole lot of wear on the front here from reholstering. I mean, I don't miss putting the gun back in the holster very often, so I'm not really sliding it across there. So I don't know that there's a lot of plus there, but it does look a lot better. I think it looks better, at least aesthetically. Then on the slide, the main thing is it's now optics ready, and they did give the 4 plates. And I think plate number 2 is your RMR plate, which also fits your hollow suns. I think the Delta point as well. But I found a sight, the Hollow Sun SCS, the one that mounts directly to this, and I'll be doing a review of that after I've installed it, but there's no plate required. And whenever possible, I personally like to go direct mount with your optic to your slide with no plate, because I think the plate adds an extra couple of screws that could be stressed out. It makes it higher up on the gun, so it's impossible to co-witness with your standard height sights. And it also, I think, makes there's just an extra layer of possible vulnerability or failure there. So whenever possible, I direct mount to the slide. So I'll let everyone know. I'll do a review and I'll let everyone know what I think of that new sight. But if you did have a favorite sight optic that you wanted to mount on here, there's tons of plates for it, and they come with the firearm. So now let's actually take it apart and look on the internals, because there's been some internal, oh, actually, let's go back to the trigger. So the trigger on the Gen 5 is smoother than the trigger on the Gen 3 or the Gen 4. So we'll do the take up. Here's the take up. There's the wall. There was a little bit of creep there, or a little bit of creep, but there wasn't any stacking. It didn't actually get heavier. It was just, it rolled right through and then it broke. Here's the reset. And the break again. So is this a perfect trigger? This isn't a 1911 or a 2011 trigger by any means, but it is better than, smoother, I think. Doesn't feel as gritty as the older Glock triggers, and part of that is they redesigned the way that their safety system works, which we can see when we get under the slide. But what they did is they redesigned the firing pin block plunger that goes up right here, so that as the trigger's going back and it's pushing that plunger up to unblock the firing pin as it's cocking the firing pin back at the same time, it's a lot smoother than it was before. So they actually did some internal work on this firearm. So let's go ahead and take the slide off. And we'll take the slide off of the Gen 3 as well, so that we can look at both of them together. So as far as inside the actual frame, I might be missing something, but I don't see any difference really inside of the frame. So there might be something, but I don't see anything different on the internals of the frame. And here you can actually see the mag well better this way. So you can see that it has the mag well where this one doesn't. And also you can see the beveling at the front of the frame, where it's thinner here on the Gen 5 than it is on the Gen 3. See, that's kind of blocky because it's not beveled. So now to the slides. First thing that you'll notice is that the Gen 3 has a single spring capturing the guide rod, whereas on the Gen 5 they've moved to the double spring captured guide rod. So I do like this better. Guide rods are still plastic, but I've got a ton of rounds through this. I personally haven't ever heard or seen in real life a guide rod breaking. I'm not saying that they don't, but I don't know that that's a thing. And a lot of striker fired polymer handguns have plastic guide rods, so if they were breaking everywhere by now, we would have heard it. So we'll take out the barrel, Gen 3 barrel. Gen 5 barrel. So one of the changes on the barrel, you can see on the Gen 3, there's a slight bit of a slope right here, right? On the Gen 5, they've removed that slope. I don't know how well you can see that. You can see it right there at the front. On the Gen 5, they've removed that slope. I think that slope was originally there for, I believe, shooting underpowered ammo through it, and they still wanted it to cycle, so that removed some of the friction when the round went off and the barrel unlocked, right? The slide went back and everything unlocked. Now, they've removed that, and I don't know that that's going to be missed because we're not shooting underpower ammo for the most part anymore and for duty carry, right? So that's one of the things. The other thing is that if you look in the barrel, this has their standard polygonal rifling. They've updated the rifling, and they say it makes it, they've given some crazy claims about how much more accurate. It is more accurate from what I can tell. I don't know how much, but it is. And they've also got a target recessed crown here, which I like that personally for multiple reasons, one of which the barrel sticks out a little bit from the front of the gun, and if you ever did impact anything with the front, you're not going to bust your crown, which would definitely impact your accuracy. So this barrel, even if it's not more accurate, which it is, but even if it wasn't, that's actually a pretty big deal. So they say they've updated the rifling, but I've heard some differences of opinions on why they did that, and some of it has to do with the actual imprint that it puts on the bullet, so that the bullet can be identified. If two police officers, for instance, shot a perpetrator, they could tell which better. It would be more easy for them to tell which barrel fired the round. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the wives' tale that I've heard, at least. But it is more accurate. Looking inside here, you can see on the slide for the Gen 5, you can see where they've updated the plunger. This actually, as you pull the trigger, part of what's happening when you're pulling the trigger is this is being pushed up that unblocks the firing pin. It finishes cocking, and then on the back side back here, there's a drop safe safety that is also part of the lever when it goes up, that removes the drop safe safety, allows the firearm to go off, and then when the triggers reset, all those things immediately go back on, right? So there's actually 3 different safeties in the Glock. There's your trigger safety, there's your firing pin safety, and there's your drop safe safety in the back. If you look at the old Glock, you'll see that that plunger is different. So they've done some internal work here to make that smoother, which has benefited the trigger as well. So overall, what do I think about the differences between the Gen 5 Glock and the Gen 3 Glock? There's more going on here. I know it still looks like a Glock, which that's good or bad depending on what you think, right? But there's more going on here as far as the differences between these two guns than meets the eye. So one of the main things obviously is that now it's optics ready, and optics, most people are starting to move towards carrying optics on their carry guns, which is a good thing that Glock finally got in the game with the optics, because it's not the future now, it's now. So overall, I do like this Glock better than the Gen 3. I didn't even mention about the finger grooves being gone, because they were gone in the 4 as well. And the finger grooves never bothered me because they match my fingers perfectly, but I do understand why. Everybody's hand size is different. This allows more variation of where you can actually have your hand, and it fits better for a large majority of the people out there. I completely understand that. And I do, it's still kind of blocky, but it's blocky for a reason, I think. When you're holding your handgun, you're not supposed to be squeezing around the whole handgun. At least that's how I was taught. You're supposed to be pressing forward and pressing on the back, right? And what that does is that allows for more vertical movement during recoil, and hopefully faster, if you're holding correctly, faster return to your target, right? So your sights return back to your target faster. So I'm not really anti Glock grip, to be honest with you. And while we're talking about the grip, it still has that same Glock sweep back grip where you actually have to kind of push down when you pull up, when you go to aim. Push down when you pull up. Have to actually push down when you're aiming, but I use that, and this is personal again, right? Your mileage can vary here and you can disagree, but if you've ever been bow hunting or You'll know how when you pull back your release, you actually have an anchor point on your cheek, and you want to anchor it in the same place over and over again. Same thing with a precision rifle. You want to have the same cheek weld over and over again. I find this no different. After training with this, I actually have a point on my wrist where I know where my anchor point is and how that feels, so I immediately can go to that position. So I kind of use this as, instead of a vanilla grip where I'm just pointing and hoping that I'm pointing the same way all the time, this actually gives me something to lock onto, right? When I'm, lock my wrist in the right position. So I consider that, to a certain extent, a plus. Anyway, if you like these kind of videos and you're interested in seeing the review of the optic that goes on here after I mount it and shoot it a bit, go ahead and like and subscribe to my channel. And if you have any questions, or if you have any other opinions that you'd like to throw out, go ahead and put those in the comments. Otherwise, have a nice day.